What's up, humans, and welcome to a new Psicoactivo. No fan today, no background noise, because it's not as hot in my room as it usually is. So I get to speak a little more relaxed without screaming so much. Today's video is very interesting to me because I am going to connect a few dots and I need you guys to follow up with me. First of all, Ross Coulthart has been very active this week. You guys know that he did an interview with Lou Elizondo last week on News Nation. But he was also on a Reddit AMA last night, and he responded to a lot of interesting questions. Amongst the most interesting, it was nice to see Ross talking about the mummies and how he's a little involved in the scientific investigation of the mummies. He didn't deny they were real, and he agrees that they deserve to be investigated. So that's nice from Ross to hear. Finally, we get something from him publicly. The other part is more in tune to what I have to talk about today. There was this question that someone asked them that goes like this. Ross responded like this because this person asked a lot of questions and he just answered to one of them. This is what Ross says. Your question. Given your view that consciousness is the key to understanding UAPs, how might a family with a history of deep involvement, intelligence, or covert operations have experienced or been impacted by consciousness-related phenomena, perhaps even without realizing it? And Ross responds, my answer is, this is a very interesting question, and I suspect you are perhaps from such a family. What I can tell you is that many people who have operated in covert roles as spies or soldiers, especially folk who have experienced near-death encounters in combat, appear to have a susceptibility to the phenomenon. I suspect the phenomenon reflects back at us what we show to it. So many combat veterans perceive the phenomenon as a danger and a threat, and it proceeds to terrify them, whereas other people who simply accept the phenomenon and embrace its significance have positive experiences. I suggest that family use meditation and relaxation techniques to try to consciously engage with the phenomenon in a non-threatening way. You might find it responds similarly positively. That is very interesting because it does talk about something that I touched upon in previous videos where I say that people who have like a more military oriented background tend to look at the phenomenon as something negative or a threat, and that they have the power within them to change their approach so that they don't consider the phenomenon as something dangerous. And this is exactly what Ross is talking about. We're on the same page here, so thank you, Ross. But this also brought back something very interesting that I want to talk about. CIA operative Jim Semivan, who, in case you guys didn't know, he's one of the leading names from the effort that created To the Stars Academy with Tom DeLonge. Just so you guys understand, Semivan has a position in the CIA and a level of clearance in the CIA that is exactly the same as the highest ranking general from the military. But his clearance is from the intelligence community. So he's way up there. And there's this clip of Grant Cameron, who was on Jimmy Church's show yesterday, I think, or the day before, where he talks about meeting with Chris Bledsoe. And Chris Bledsoe told him something really interesting about Jim Semivan. I'm going to play the clip right now.
And Chris Bledsoe told me at that time, he said, He called him the big man in Washington. That was Jim Semivan. So I was the first guy to put Jim Semivan's name out there in 2016. And I was told that Jim was behind this whole thing, this whole disclosure. He said to me, Chris said to me, Jim had told him high level people are going to come forward and they are going to say UFOs exist and they are going to force disclosure. And what you have is you have a situation where Jim Semivan talks about it in all his interviews where he had this experience. He's trying to figure out what's going on. And he goes to all the high level three-letter agencies. And he says, you guys had a chance to get this thing out. You didn't get this thing out. We're going to drop this thing. And we're not going to release classified information, but we're going to drop this thing. And that's what they did. It was Jim Semivan that was behind the whole thing. When Lou Elizondo retired, October the 4th, 2017, it was Jim Semivan that brought in Leslie Kane and sat there with Mellon and stuff. And then in the afternoon, they had the meeting. He resigned in the morning, in the afternoon. And it was the story that was fed to the New York Times that changed everything. Once we got on the...
That's interesting, right? Because the way Ross framed it here, and all the accounts that we've seen and heard from Jim Semivan about his experiences with the phenomenon tells us that he has negative experiences in general. And he's basing much of his decision making based on the negative experiences he's had. And since he's at the top of the chain right now in this group, people are listening to what he has to say. And they also want to consider the phenomenon a threat. Maybe Jim could use a little bit of that advice that Ross just gave this person on the Reddit AMA. I don't know if Jim has already attempted to try and look at the phenomenon in a different light, but given that his accounts talk about this phenomenon harassing his family members, I would maybe try something different and see if the phenomenon responds in a different way. Maybe he will be surprised if it does. Give it a go. You might be surprised. So, this is one part. And I think that is very important to note here that Grant Cameron basically is saying that Jim Semivan is at the tip of the spear of this disclosure effort. So he's like some sort of disclosure Don. Oh, sorry, Jim. And I think this is also very important to note because if he's the one leading the effort and he's already looking at the phenomenon negatively, I would advise for someone else with similar clearances, maybe from the scientific community, possibly Dr. Hal Puthoff, who I think has a similar level to Jim, to take over this. Because if Jim is acting out of fear due to the experiences he had with the phenomenon, I think that is compromising the whole mission. So that would be my advice for both and the entire disclosure effort group, you know. So there's another couple of Reddit AMA pieces that I want to show you guys. But before this, just so you know what I mean with Jim Semivan looking at the phenomenon negatively, here's a clip from Engaging the Phenomenon where he talks about the phenomenon being hard to digest, the phenomenon reality. Take it away, James.
I don't think anything is more extraordinary and more potentially dangerous than the knowledge that there is a non-human intelligence or intelligences out there that have the capability to read your mind, come into your house, threaten the idea of sovereignty, free will. How the hell do you throw this concept that, let's just say, it's a combination of quantum theory, like Lou said, it probably could be, and consciousness, two of the grandest problems that we have. I mean, in physics and in neuroscience, and we can't wrap our arms around it. How the hell do you throw that out there? And it's like this big old meatball hanging out there, right? And you're asking people, who are consumed with their daily life, You know what it's like. You got a family, you know what I mean? You get up, you got a job, you got to do all this kind of stuff. And then somebody throws this huge thing at you and said, oh, by the way, we're not alone in the universe. And these other entities have godlike powers compared to us, can pretty much do what the hell they want, when they want. And we have no idea what the hell they're doing and why they're doing it. And they tell us stories. They tell us what? Two stories. They always tell us it's the environment and it's the nuclear problem, right? Those are the only two stories we hear. We don't hear about where humans came from. We don't hear about where they came from. They always say to people, well, you wouldn't understand, right? You wouldn't understand. So we can't get into that. Is that real? Is that not real? Are they 100 years more advanced than we are? Are they, possibly 3 or 4 million years more advanced than we are? Are they an ultra terrestrial race that lives on the planet with us, but maybe in another time dimension, that maybe they're vibrating a little bit faster than we are, so we can't really see them.
Yeah. So he's looking at it potentially in a negative light. That's for sure. Let's see if he changes his tune. Hopefully he does. So let's move on to a different aspect of what Ross Coulthart talked about. I'm going to read to you the largest question and the largest message he got about a word he mentioned on the last Reddit AMA. They asked him if there was a word that we needed to pay attention to. He said yes, psionic. So now he responded to this question. Here it is. It's a two-parter, but I'm just going to read the second question. He said, in a previous AMA, you mentioned psionic abilities as being underappreciated in the common discourse. Can you elaborate on what you meant by this and or which elements, types of abilities are most salient? And then Ross responded, psionic, yes. I am very interested in an alleged psionic program that the US government and certain private corporations have been operating for some considerable time. That is why I recently put Uri Geller on my reality check show. People miss the point of my interviewing him. I've been abused by folks for giving him credibility. Yes, he was accused of being a fraud and a charlatan. But have a look at the CIA library declassified files and look at the work the CIA did with him to show his psionic abilities were allegedly verified as authentic 50 years ago. These were rigidly scientific controlled blind studies. Why was the CIA interested in psionic psychic abilities so many years ago? And has it really stopped that interest? I don't think it has at all. I suspect the GATE program, Gifted and Talented Education, was and possibly still is used illegally by the US military and certain private companies to find kids with psionic abilities. What I am hearing is shocking. It makes MK Ultra and Sidney Gottlieb crimes with LSD and other drugs look like child's play. Interested to hear from anyone who knows what I'm talking about. Ross, I know what you're talking about. And I don't know if you've done it on purpose. I don't think you have. But a large portion of my work has to do with this investigation. I think that you guys are onto something here. And I think that the investigation that not just me, but other people within the community and in Europe are doing is very important to what you're talking about here. So I hope that you see how important this is and that you reach out so we can talk. Because I do have a lot of information. I have access to people who are privy to this specific doctor that I've been talking about incessantly. And you guys just don't seem to care. Or you're already making me think that you do know about him and you just don't want to go there. It makes sense because when I asked Nick Cook about it and I told him that there was a possibility that Dr. Puthoff might have known what happened to Dr. Jacobo Grinberg, he snapped at me and he said, that he wasn't going to entertain any conspiracy theories. I didn't say Dr. Puthoff was guilty of making Grinberg disappear. I said nothing of the sorts. I have the receipts. I just told him that I thought that Dr. Puthoff may know what happened and that I wanted to speak to him. When he saw the change in my tone, he changed his tone too. But that initial reaction was very telling. So I want to know, do you guys know something and you just are not allowed to talk about it? Because we know how mysterious Dr. Greenberg's disappearance was. And I know that aside from people from the Five Eyes, both scientists and journalists, the rest of the world understands that Dr. Jacobo Greenberg's work was pivotal to the study of consciousness and pivotal to the study of these psi abilities, because he studied the source of where they come from and their history. He did it through shamans. So what are you guys not telling us? Why are you so dismissive about it? And granted, if you guys don't think it's really that important, I get it. But you can at least tell me. I already got some feedback from someone who is not well read on the topic, and he's a friend of yours. And this person told me that there was nothing of substance in Dr. Greenberg's work. And I asked him, have you read Dr. Greenberg's work? He was like, of course not. I have a lot to read. And I'm like, so why are you telling me there's no substance if you haven't read anything? So I am sensing a certain level of gaslighting and a certain level of just standoffish vibes from all of you. And I would like to know why. Another part of the AMA, this is a little bit concerning though, because here's the question. Ross, can you expand on the word psionic and how it relates to the phenomenon? What role do you think consciousness plays? And then Ross responded, I suspect, and I have spoken to a lot of scientists who believe this, that all humans have precognitive abilities that have been lost in our highly rational and technological society. I am aware of a secret United States Air Force program that is probably still operational where children with supposed psionic abilities are being tracked and trained. How on earth they expect this to stay secret for so long beats me. But I am on their tail right now, and you'll be seeing my investigation at some stage. So if you guys are doing this investigation on your own, and if you guys have ignored what people like me, people like Dr. Alex Gomez Marin, people like Ida Cuellar have been doing for a while now, we're going to have a problem, because you guys need to learn how to share these stories, because they're important for humanity, not for your views. And I think we should work together on stuff like this, because it is very important and you guys are not playing ball. So I would like to know why, because if you are doing it for views and for exclusivity, you need to check on yourselves a little more. I'm sorry, but that's what I think. I think it's irresponsible for people who are investigating similar topics that are potentially paradigm shifting to collaborate with each other. And if you don't, that's already pretty telling. So what gives? You know? And then the final part of Ross's AMA that I found interesting is how disillusioned he is with disclosure. And it is something that Christian Harloff talks about constantly. I've never really trusted that disclosure is coming from the government. I'm still going to support it. I think Ross is supporting it too. But I think we are on the same page again when it comes to how hopeful we are that the UAPDA will pass. This is what Ross said to this question. What would you like to see happen? Ross says, I think it's inevitable. I think it's inevitable that solid scientific investigation, almost certainly privately funded, will reveal the existence of NHI. Government disclosure is a complete waste of time. Their heart is not in it. I think even sympathetic congressional representatives are excessively manipulable with talk of protecting national security. The only way to revealing this is independent, objective investigation. This is very revealing to what is actually going on between the disclosure bros. I've talked about it multiple times already. We talked about it at length with John Burroughs, who, as you guys know, Ross was after him for these documents of his injuries that proved he was injured by a UAP, but John refused to give them anything because he saw through them. And yes, their heart is not in it because if they don't get a head start with whatever technology will be uncovered, they don't want to be a part of it or they won't support it. We see this happening with the Skinwalker Ranch crew. I saw Dr. Jacques Vallée at the Soul Foundation asking about eminent domain. He seemed really concerned about it, almost as if he has some material himself that he doesn't want to give up. I know Dr. Nolan has some material as well. He showed it on the Jesse Michaels show. And you can keep counting. John Burroughs has mentioned that a lot of these people still have running contracts with the government and with the DOD. So whatever they're trying to find out or uncover, some of them have been trying for decades, may be linked to getting new contracts, not to disclosure. I'm thinking that they are hoping that we get confirmation that NHI exists, but not full disclosure, because if we got full disclosure, that means they wouldn't probably get all of the contracts they want. So that's where we're standing right now. And this response from Ross echoes the frustration that we all feel, because these guys are fighting for exclusives, contracts, narratives, and they're leaving the actual disclosure below all of that. So I don't know. That's how I'm reading this. Maybe I'm wrong. If you guys think I'm wrong, let me know in the comments. What do you guys think about Ross's expansion on the psionic word, about this program that has allegedly kept children on check to see if they have skills, and they train them and all this stuff? This sounds like 2020 and back, right? Which it's been debunked already, but it does sound kind of weird. So yeah, let me know what you guys think. Why do you think Ross is conducting this investigation and he doesn't seem interested in the Jacobo Grinberg story? What do you think that is? It is really strange to me, especially the bulk of Jacobo's work. It's so big, so massive, to be ignored like this. It's really strange. But I'm going to keep digging and I'm going to keep asking uncomfortable questions until you answer them. Hopefully you do soon and we can get along. That's all I want. So if you like the content you see, please like, share, comment, subscribe. We're almost at 5,000 subscribers. As soon as I hit the 5,000 mark, I am going to start with YouTube memberships and potentially a Patreon. So, because I do have a lot of information that I'm not sharing on YouTube, but I will gladly share with people who actually care and who would keep it there, because some of it is sensitive, but I am willing to share with you guys. You guys have been great all this time. It's not even been a year since I've started creating content in English, I think the channel is growing rapidly, and I am putting in the work, and I see the response from you, and it only motivates me to keep going. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. So until the next time, tomorrow, for a new video. Bye.